What if death is not freedom? What if the moment consciousness leaves the body is not liberation, not ascension, not peace, but the most dangerous threshold the soul will ever cross? In my view, this single question threatens the foundation of nearly every religious and spiritual system humanity has ever trusted. We are taught, almost universally, that death is release. That whatever suffering exists in life dissolves at the moment of dying. That something benevolent waits beyond the veil. But ancient Gnostic texts do not speak with that kind of comfort. They speak with suspicion. They speak with urgency. And most unsettling of all, they speak as if death itself is part of the mechanism that keeps souls trapped. From my research into early Gnostic writings, especially the Nag Hammadi codices discovered in Egypt in 1945, what stands out to me is how cold and technical their view of existence is. These texts are not sermons. They are not prayers. They read more like forbidden schematics of reality. Manuals describing a universe that functions, not because it is good, but because it is controlled. The Gnostics did not begin with the question, how do we live morally? They began with a far more dangerous one, who designed this world, and for what purpose? According to Gnostic cosmology, reality is not governed by a single, unified divine intelligence. Instead, existence is layered, fragmented, and hierarchical. At the highest level is an ineffable, unknowable source, beyond language, beyond form, beyond time. It does not rule. It does not command. It does not punish. It simply exists as fullness. Totality. Being itself. This realm is called the pleroma. Everything below the pleroma is derivative. In my interpretation, the moment reality becomes structured, it also becomes vulnerable to distortion. And it is from such a distortion, what the texts describe as an error or imbalance, that the Demiurge emerges. The Demiurge is not evil in the theatrical sense. He is not Satan as later theology imagines him. He is far more disturbing than that. He is ignorant. He is blind to what exists above him. And because of that blindness, he mistakes himself for the highest authority in existence. In the Apocryphon of John, one of the most important Gnostic texts, the Demiurge proclaims, "I am God, and there is no other God beside me." What stands out to me is that the text does not present this as deception, it presents it as delusion. The Demiurge truly believes this statement. And the tragedy is that his creation reflects that belief. From my analysis, the material universe is not created out of love, wisdom, or divine intention. It is created out of imitation. The Demiurge copies the patterns of higher reality without understanding their source. The result is a world that looks coherent, feels solid, and operates under laws, but lacks true awareness of why it exists. This suggests something deeply unsettling. Suffering is not intentional. It is collateral. The world is not cruel because it wants to be. It is flawed because its creator is incomplete. What stands out to me is how radically this overturns mainstream religious narratives. There is no grand moral test imposed by a benevolent father. There is no divine plan guiding history toward salvation. Instead, there is structure, administration, law, order without wisdom. And humanity exists inside this system as an anomaly. According to Gnostic thought, human beings carry something that does not belong to the material universe, a divine spark. A fragment of the true source embedded within flesh, time, and decay. Consciousness itself is the intrusion. In my view, this explains why human awareness feels fractured, why we feel alienated, restless, haunted by the sense that something is wrong with reality but cannot articulate what it is. The soul remembers a place it has never physically seen. But memory alone is not liberation. The Demiurge does not rule alone. He is surrounded by entities known as Archons. These are not demons in the mythological sense. They are rulers, governors, cosmic officials. Each Archon presides over a domain of existence, time, fate, authority, fear, desire, decay. Together, they form a system of control that extends far beyond the physical world. What stands out to me is how administrative this universe feels. It is not emotional. It is procedural. Souls are not judged in a moral court, they are processed. In texts such as the Hypostasis of the Archons and On the Origin of the World, these entities are described as actively interfering with human awakening. Not through violence, but through deception, distraction, and false belief. Their power does not come from force. It comes from managing perception. This suggests that ignorance is not a flaw in the system. It is the system. From my analysis, death is the point where this system reveals its true function. Modern spirituality tends to portray death as an escape from material limitation. But Gnostic texts imply something far more disturbing. Death is not exit. It is transfer. Consciousness leaves the body, but it does not leave the jurisdiction of the Demiurge. Instead, the soul enters intermediate realms governed by the Archons. In my interpretation, this is where the reincarnation trap begins. Souls that lack Gnosis, direct knowledge of their divine origin, cannot pass through these realms. They do not recognize what they encounter. They mistake authority for divinity. They mistake brightness for truth. They mistake familiarity for safety. And so they comply. This suggests that reincarnation is not accidental. It is default behavior. From my research, Gnostic texts do not describe rebirth as spiritual progress. They describe it as wandering, as being cast back into embodiment again and again, stripped of memory, assigned new identity, and reintegrated into the system. I personally think this is one of the most radical redefinitions of reincarnation ever proposed. Not growth. Not evolution. Reset. The soul does not return because it failed morally, but because it failed to remember. What stands out to me is how rarely Gnostic texts speak of improvement across lives. They speak instead of cycles. Loops, wheels. The wheel of fate. The wheel of necessity. The Apocryphon of John describes Archons who govern destiny itself. Fate is not divine will, it is mechanical enforcement. A system ensuring continuity. This suggests that what many traditions call karma may be indistinguishable from cosmic automation. In my view, the most terrifying implication is this: death does not dissolve illusion. It may intensify it. At the moment of death, identity collapses. Memory fragments. The familiar structure of the self dissolves. And in that state, consciousness becomes highly suggestible. From my analysis, this is precisely when the system intervenes. Many modern esoteric interpretations speak of encountering a light after death, radiant, comforting, familiar. While the phrase false light does not appear explicitly in ancient Gnostic texts, the idea aligns disturbingly well with their warnings about deceptive rulers and false revelations. I personally think the Gnostics would caution that not every light is divine. Not every guide is trustworthy. Not every realm beyond death belongs to the true source. What stands out to me is how often liberation in Gnostic texts depends not on obedience, but on refusal. Refusal to worship false gods. Refusal to accept imposed identity. Refusal to submit to systems claiming ultimate authority. This suggests that salvation is not granted. It is asserted. And that is precisely why these ideas were considered dangerous. From my research, Gnosticism was not suppressed because it was wrong, but because it was uncontrollable. It placed liberation inside the individual, not in institutions, rituals, or hierarchies. In my view, the Demiurge's greatest power is not cruelty. It is legitimacy. He is obeyed because he appears to be the highest authority available. And most souls never question whether something exists beyond him. This suggests that the reincarnation trap does not require force. It requires belief. Belief that this world is all there is. Belief that death resets rather than frees. Belief that authority equals truth. In my interpretation, the tragedy is not that souls are trapped, but that they consent to the trap without knowing it exists. And this leads to the most unsettling question of all: if death is not the escape, then when does escape happen? Because if the Gnostics are right, the moment consciousness leaves the body may already be too late. If death is not the escape, then the only remaining question is this: when does escape actually occur? In my view, this is the moment where Gnostic thought becomes truly dangerous, not just to religion, but to the entire psychological architecture of human civilization. Because the answer Gnosticism offers is deeply unsettling, escape does not happen after death. It happens before it, or it does not happen at all. From my research, Gnostic texts are almost obsessively clear about this point. Liberation is not a post-mortem event. It is a state of awareness, a condition of consciousness, a radical shift in perception that must be achieved while one is still embodied. Death does not grant Gnosis. Gnosis grants freedom from death. This suggests that the body is not the prison. Ignorance is. In my interpretation, this is why Gnosticism places such an extreme emphasis on knowledge, not intellectual knowledge, not belief, not doctrine, but recognition. Remembering who you are. Remembering where you come from. Remembering what does not belong to this world. The moment a soul truly recognizes its origin, the entire cosmic hierarchy loses authority over it. What stands out to me is how juridical this sounds. Authority exists only where it is acknowledged. The Archons rule because souls accept their jurisdiction. The Demiurge governs because he is believed to be the highest power. The moment that belief collapses, the system fractures. This suggests that Gnosis is not enlightenment in a poetic sense, it is a legal exemption from the cosmic order. In texts like Pistis Sophia, this idea is made explicit. The soul must pass through realms ruled by Archons after death, and each ruler demands something: a confession, a password, an acknowledgement of authority. Souls that lack knowledge submit automatically. Souls that possess Gnosis do not recognize the Archons as legitimate rulers, and therefore are not bound by them. In my view, this is one of the most radical ideas ever proposed in spiritual history. The afterlife is not moral, it is administrative. You are not judged by how good you were. You are processed based on what you know. This suggests that goodness alone does not free the soul. Obedience does not free the soul. Faith does not free the soul. Only recognition does. I personally think this is why Gnosticism terrified early church authorities. A system that says salvation depends on inner knowledge cannot be regulated. It cannot be standardized. It cannot be sold. From my analysis, this is also why Christ is portrayed so differently in Gnostic texts. Christ is not a sacrifice appeasing divine anger. He is not a mediator between humanity and a wrathful God. He is a revealer, a disruptor sent from beyond the Demiurge system to awaken the divine spark within humanity. In the Apocryphon of John, Christ descends not to forgive sins, but to expose the architecture of reality. He reveals the false creator. He unmasks the Archons. He explains how the soul became trapped and how it can escape. This suggests that the original message of Christ was not about worship, but about awakening. In my interpretation, the kingdom of God is within you is not a metaphor. It is a warning. The kingdom is not coming after death. It is not descending from the sky. It is already present, but hidden beneath layers of illusion, identity, and fear. What stands out to me is how often Gnostic Christ tells his followers not to obey blindly, not to worship authorities, not to trust appearances. He speaks in riddles not to obscure truth, but to bypass systems that cannot comprehend it. This suggests that truth itself is dangerous to the system. In my view, the Demiurge's greatest defense mechanism is distraction. As long as souls are busy surviving, desiring, fearing, competing, worshipping, and obeying, they never stop to ask the most important question: who am I beneath all of this? From my research, Gnostic practices were designed to strip away identification. Identification with body. Identification with name. Identification with history. Identification with fate. Because identity is the handle the system uses to grab the soul. The moment you believe you are a body, death terrifies you. The moment you believe you are a story, reincarnation resets you. The moment you believe you are a role, authority controls you. This suggests that liberation requires a kind of inner death before physical death. In my interpretation, this is the true meaning of dying before you die. The ego must collapse. The false self must dissolve. The soul must realize it is not a product of this world, not owned by it, not defined by it. Only then does the reincarnation trap fail. Because the trap relies on recognition. It requires the soul to say, "This is my home." What stands out to me is how many people today unknowingly reinforce the Demiurge system while believing they are becoming more spiritual. Endless fascination with cycles, timelines, simulations, karmic lessons, soul contracts. These ideas may sound liberating, but they all normalize return. They all assume the system is benevolent. In my view, the most dangerous belief is not atheism or nihilism, it is unconditional trust in the structure of reality itself. From my analysis, Gnosticism teaches radical suspicion. Question the gods. Question the light. Question the voices. Question the realm that claims to be ultimate. This suggests that discernment is the highest spiritual faculty. The Archons cannot force the soul. They can only deceive it. And deception only works when the soul wants comfort more than truth. I personally think this is why the moment of death is so critical. It is the moment when the soul is most vulnerable to comfort, to reassurance, to familiarity, to the promise that everything will be okay. And that may be the final lie. In my view, the true source does not comfort. It liberates. It does not promise continuation. It offers return. From my research, the Gnostics believe the true divine realm does not recycle souls. It absorbs them. Not as individuals, but as awareness returning to fullness. No memory. No identity. No repetition. This suggests that the fear of ego death is the final barrier to liberation. Because reincarnation preserves identity, true return dissolves it. And the Demiurge knows this. In my interpretation, the Demiurge does not fear rebellion. He fears awakening. He fears souls realizing they do not belong to him. Because once that realization occurs, the system cannot touch them. They do not need to fight. They do not need to escape physically. They simply cease to participate. And that is the ultimate threat. What stands out to me is how this cosmology reframes human existence entirely. Life is not a moral exam. It is not a school. It is not a punishment. It is an opportunity. An opportunity to remember while still inside the illusion. Because once the illusion collapses through death, memory alone may not be enough. In my view, this is the Gnostic warning about death: do not wait for it to save you. Death does not free the soul. Awareness does. And awareness delayed may be awareness denied. So if this worldview is even partially true, then the most important spiritual work does not involve preparing for heaven, accumulating merit, or securing a favorable afterlife. It involves stripping away everything you think you are until only what cannot be taken remains. From my analysis, the reincarnation trap is not a punishment for the wicked. It is the default outcome for the unaware. And the most terrifying possibility is not suffering, but endless repetition without realization. The most liberating possibility is not reward, but return. Return not to another body, not to another world, but to the source that was never part of the system to begin with. In my interpretation, the final irony is this: the Demiurge never imprisoned the soul. The soul imprisoned itself by forgetting. And the moment it remembers, the prison disappears.